Hello everyone, I am Tejal Khandelwal and today we will have an interview masterclass for the interviews 2025 beginning from the 8th of December. We know that this is the most crucial step in your journey to becoming an All India rank officer for the UPSC CSC 2025. And we know that international relations holds the highest probability of questions that can come and appear in your interview. We also know that there are no right or wrong answers. But whatever is the line of your argument, it should be clear, crisp, it should be reasonable, logical, and unique. And yes, largely in sync with how the government is driving things. So, if you disagree with us, surely drop in your comments in the comment box. Today, we will start with the important themes and the associated most probable questions that can appear from that theme. So, we'll start with South Asia and immediate neighborhood, and we will start with Bangladesh. So, I have derived 11 questions from Bangladesh that can appear for your interview and which are very important and have appeared in the recent times. So let's start with Bangladesh and the important questions. I have derived questions, nearly 11 questions that can appear, most probable, highly probable questions that can appear. So first question reads, what are the implications of the current crisis on India? What are the implications of the current crisis? Now, whenever there are implications that are asked, please don't be haphazard and make sure that you talk in a structured manner. So you can say there are geopolitical implications, geostrategic implications, as well as geoeconomic implications. When we say geopolitical implications, we can say that a very strong foundation for cooperation has been built over the years. Bilaterally, that will certainly be hampered. There is trilateral cooperation between Bangladesh, Pakistan, and China, which can begin. We can also see the rise of Islamic forces and the decline of liberal secular forces, which were more supportive of India. We can also see that regional cooperation that India envisaged and lay its bet on Bangladesh with respect to considering Bangladesh as a very important linchpin towards the Look East policy as well as the Neighbourhood First policy will also be impacted geopolitically. When we talk about the geostrategic implications that can arise because of the domestic crisis that are happening within Bangladesh, we can say that China will make inroads strategically in Bangladesh. Example in Lal Mornihat Air Base near Siliguri corridor. We can also see how defense cooperation, trade has increased with Pakistan and high-level meets are happening between the leaders on both the sides. We can also see that there will be more trans-border crimes. There will be rise in insurgency in the northeast if Bangladeshi soil does not, or if Bangladesh soil provides cover to such kind of insurgents. And we can also see more civilian accidents. We can see killing of more trans-border personnel like the BSF personnel. And we can see rise of many groups which are anti-India like Hujibi, like Jamaatul Mujahideen, as well as Harkatul Jihad al-Islami, which can arise. And we know that they also conduct a lot of lectures, discourses in the state of Northwest Bengal. So strategic implications are these. And when we talk of the economic implications, we see that already the textile industry of Bangladesh was strongly dependent on the land ports of India. And now there are restrictions on both sides, as well as India has said that only the seaports with long overdue processes will be there with respect to any kind of transshipment facilities that India used to earlier provide with respect to their textile industry, which would export across Europe. So in this case also things will be having a lot of severe implication. When we talk about economic implications, yes, bilaterally there are many connectivity projects that have been envisaged that also will be impacted, and yes, trade will also be impacted. So these are the larger implications when we talk about. So the examiner, the interviewer may ask you in this context, you can talk of geopolitical, geostrategic, geoeconomic. Now, The second question reads, what are the policy options before India in light of the verdict against Sheikh Hasina? So when we talk about policy options before India, so there are obviously two policy options. Either we send Sheikh Hasina after the death sentence that has been given with the International Criminal Tribunals, which has conducted trial against her, right? So second option can be that we will not extradite her. But we can say, if we choose the line of answering that the policy option is that India should not extradite her, in this regard, the policy option is because there are no legal implications, because the treaty itself provides a lot of exceptions if they are with respect to Article 6 within the treaty itself, that exceptions are provided. And if they are the charges that are there, they are of unjust or oppressive nature, and they are not made in good faith or in the interest of justice. In this regard, yes, the policy option, because it has not been made in the faith or interest of justice, India has the option of denial. So we may choose not to accept the validity of the International Crimes Tribunal. That is the idea. All right. And we can also say that, justifying the stand morally, that India has always provided shelter to those who have sought. So Sheikh Hasina is not the only one, and there has been historical precedent that we have also given cover to her back very much early in 70s. But also, like Dalai Lama, and we also have given shelter to many Sri Lankan Tamils, Afghans, Rohingyas who have migrated to India. So yes, policy options can be justified in this line, that why India can deny. Now, what are the exceptions in the India-Bangladesh extradition treaty, and to what extent India's denial is justified? Now, we know that the objective of the extradition treaty that is there between both is to address fugitive across borders in both countries, even though that is not part of the question, but I'm just giving you an information. So who are fugitives? Okay, fugitives are individuals who are accused or convicted of an offense or crime across both countries, okay, or who stand in trial for a crime. But the Article 6 of the treaty itself provides exceptions for political offenses, unjust or oppressive charges. So yes, Article 6 provides within the treaty, and to what extent India's denial is justified is because the principles of natural justice itself has not been followed by the International Crimes Tribunal. Yes, so in this context, when the validity, the acceptance of the International Crimes Tribunal itself is not there, we know the nature of how the proceedings of the International Crimes Tribunal were. There were no international judges. It was completely composed of domestic judges, and some of the judges were also from the Bangladesh Nationalist Party. So in this context, when the aim is political vendetta and not justice, then it is not legally binding on India, as well as India's stand is morally justified of denying extradition for Sheikh Hasina. Now, what is the International Crimes Tribunal and the key problem with it? We know that the International Crimes Tribunal has been convened in 2010 for those who have committed treachery, right, in the 1971 Bangladeshi war, the liberation war of Bangladesh. So it had been constituted to try those who had committed treachery, and Jamaat-e-Islami was one of them. All right. Now, when we talk of this ICT today, what is the problem with it? So we know that it has been revived. It was convened by Sheikh Hasina herself, and it has been revived. And today the composition, the nature, who has revived it is the interim government. The interim government is itself not a representative or a legitimate authority itself. So they have convened it. The process with respect to justice, either procedural as well as on substantial grounds, has not been followed. So yes, we can say that International Criminal Tribunal also have international judges in many cases, like in the case of Yugoslavia, like in the case of Rwanda. But here it is only composed of domestic judges. So in this case, this can be justified. Now, so it is seen largely as partisan in nature. That is the problem with this particular tribunal. Now, what are the charges against Hasina by the International Crimes Tribunal? So, the charges are her alleged role for the violent crackdown on student protests in Dhaka in 2024. And she is guilty of crimes against humanity. So, these are the allegations that have been made on the basis of which death sentence has been pronounced against Sheikh Hasina during the July revolution, the students' protest that happened. Now, what is the July proclamation or the July Charter Pledge? What does it say? So, we know that an interim government was composed and Muhammad Yunus heads this as the chief advisor. So, when we talk of July proclamation comes from the July revolution in Bangladesh that happened in 2024. And it largely seeks to bring about constitutional reforms in Bangladesh. If I have to say, it is trying to reverse the great legacy of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. So, however, when we talk of it on the official level, what does this July proclamation pledge? So, they say that it is largely signed by the consent of most political parties. And it pledges constitutional reforms before elections will be held to ensure what? To ensure accountability, transparent governance, separation of powers, and robust democratic processes. So this is what the July proclamation has been pronouncing. And they want to bring to the Bangladesh constitution secularism, democracy, liberation, and fuel in nationalism in Bangladesh. All right, so that is the larger spirit of the July proclamation. But if we have to say in one line, we should say that it is signed by political parties which seeks to do constitutional reforms to bring transparency, accountability, democratic processes, and separation of powers. Now, the next question reads, what is mobocracy? And do you think there is mobocracy in Bangladesh? So we know that mobocracy is a very negative term, which means here it is the mobs who takes up against, who uses force or controls the government through intimidation or violence. All right. So because they consider the existing government as very oppressive in character. Now, so despite the charter, we know that Bangladesh, the charter that has come, the July proclamation, the interim government, we know that there is no stability. There is no law and order. And we know that it is the protest which have taken the form to meet the demands within Bangladesh. So yes, we can say there is a sort of a mobocracy that is happening in Bangladesh because street protest have become the new normal and the default mode for making demands. Okay, so they are comprising of students, workers, pressure groups, etc. Now, next question is, do you think the caretaker regime has overreached its mandate? What is a caretaker government or an interim government's purpose? It is to allow for the smooth transfer of power and conduct timely elections. Right? It is neither the parliament, neither it is the constituent assembly. But yes, the caretaker government has certainly overreached its mandate in that way. And it is trying to take revenge for earlier defeats in this context. Now, next question is, What is India's official policy stand on the death sentence? So India has said that India will largely engage with all stakeholders in context of the, obviously, we have neither said direct yes or no for the formal extradition request that has been made, that too by an interim government, which we know is not representative as well as legitimate that way. So when we talk of India's official policy stand, there is no yes or no, and we want to engage with all stakeholders. Okay. But if we have to say, what is this time for India in this context? We say that yes, this is a time of diplomatic test, because this entire situation is not only a matter of legal dilemma, but it will certainly create some structural problems between the cooperation foundation that has been laid in India-Bangladesh relations for years. We would say that India-Bangladesh relations have been passing through a golden phase. And now, after the July revolution, things have turned upside down. And it is not a very favorable environment. So, rightly, as Jay Shankar says, that the onus now lies on Bangladesh of what kind of relations it wants with India. Okay, so in this context, there are challenges, and we should admit in the interview that this is a diplomatic test for India. It is certainly a tough time. And this will show pragmatism in your answer. If you say this, that yes, it is certainly a diplomatic test. So it is not only legal dilemmas that will be creating from the treaties and, India's denial also or approval, but approval is not a case in this context. So yeah. Now, the next question is a very important question. And the question clearly asks, should India extradite Sheikh Hasina? So there are two ways of answering this question. You can directly say that no and give your justification. Or you can say that by not giving a certain answer, you can say that sir or madam, it should be with respect to the extradition, that India should take a pragmatic stand based on the merits of this case. Because with respect to extradition and the trial, they have not followed the procedural and substantive aspects of justice. There was no defense lawyer who made any, obstructions or any kind of adjournments with respect to the trial. The judges on the International Crimes Tribunal, right, their partisan nature, and the whole purpose has not been driven by justice. It has been driven by political vendetta. And there is not great acceptance of this, neither nationally, neither internationally, because obviously even Awami League is protesting. So in this context, you can say, rather than giving a direct no, you can say India should take a pragmatic stand based on these justifications with respect to justice, with respect to procedure that is being followed. Right? If that is not being done, then yes, we should certainly not be driven to certainly extradite Sheikh Hasina. And so what should India do now in the larger context with respect to Bangladesh? In the larger context with respect to Bangladesh, India should remain vigilant. And we should decouple our foreign policy from the larger internal turbulence and engage widely and constructively with stakeholders and players in the country, so that whatever foundation and cooperation that has been built for so many years does not get disturbed. So now let's start with the key dynamics between Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Afghanistan, Taliban, and India, Pakistan, as well as USA and Pakistan, because as well as even the domestic changes that have happened in Pakistan. So all this has been under a lot of news, and it can be asked. Now, when we talk about the recent attacks and the recent spat that has happened between Afghanistan and Pakistan, one of the important questions that can emerge is what is the difference between Afghanistan Taliban and Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan? So we know that Afghanistan Taliban as a group has emerged in 1990s after the withdrawal of the Soviet Union from Afghanistan, and the earlier there was Mujahideen, which was fighting as an insurgent group against the Soviet Union, and then it was Afghanistan Taliban, which is presently also there, who ruled Afghanistan from 1996 to 2001. Afghanistan Taliban is supposed to be having linkages with Al Qaeda, and that was the reason why the global war on terror was launched. Now, when we talk of Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, where is the context of the emergence of this group? So, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan as a group has emerged in 2007, and it has covert links with Afghan Taliban, with Al Qaeda, as well as Islamic State in the Khorasan province has been pointed, and those groups which have been disaffected from TTP have these larger links with ISKP. Okay, now what is the goal of Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan? Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan seeks to establish the Islamic political system driven by Sharia law. And why are they against Pakistan? They are against Pakistan because Pakistan supported the global war on terror, which was launched by USA in the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks. And because Pakistan supported this global war on terror, which was also obviously targeting Afghanistan Taliban, and they had very strong links with Taliban in this sense, so they felt very left out because of this behavior of Pakistan. And thus, TTP always continued to support Afghanistan Taliban, and again when the Taliban now has come to power, it also has not given up on the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. So this has created some sort of heat between both Afghanistan and Pakistan. So this is the idea of Afghan Taliban and Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, which means Pakistan says good Taliban, bad Taliban, but India does not say there is anything like a good Taliban or bad Taliban difference, right? Now, say, what has changed after Taliban has come to power? Taliban has continued to support Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan because Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan TTP, which is operating in the FATA areas in Pakistan, which was autonomous until 2018, when an amendment was made in Pakistan and it was merged with the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. And because of this merger that happened in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, the autonomy that was granted, okay, in these FATA areas to tribal areas. So there has been a lot of problem after that, this merger, and they want this demerger to happen of this FATA area from the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. We also need to know that the FATA area belongs to the Pashtunistan claimant that is there of Taliban. So it is also the area of Pashtunistan that they want to drive. So Pashtunistan that is there because they do not obviously accept the Durand line division between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Is this clear? Fine. Now, what are the demands of the TTP? What are the key demands of the TTP? Let's see them. So, the key demands is firstly that they oppose the merger of Pakistan's FATA areas, tribal areas with Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, which has happened in 2018. Okay, and that happened through the 25th constitutional amendment. They want the removal of security forces from there. They want to impose Sharia law over there. They want demerger of these tribal regions, and obviously they want to rule FATA. That British had created very early in 1947 so that they would act like a buffer between India, British India and Afghanistan. Okay, so Northwest Frontier Province, what we call at that point of time. So these are the larger idea is imposition of the political system driven by Sharia law. And they have also evolved themselves. We know that there was an anti-state, which means anti-Pakistan jihadi war front that they established in Pakistan. They obviously support Afghanistan Taliban against USA, and they have bases in the Pashtun tribal areas bordering Afghanistan, which we call as Waziristan, North Waziristan, South Waziristan, and there are tribes living over here. Okay, and they have also provided Al Qaeda shelter in Pakistan and aligned with them. Okay, so this is the idea with respect to TTP. Now, the next question is, why is Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province witnessing a dramatic surge in militant attacks? All questions are interlinked. What are the provincial issues? So, if we see that how this particular region has been created, we know is the colonial legacy created by the British, because they wanted a buffer between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and Afghanistan and British India at that time. And Pakistan was obviously part of British Indian Empire at that point of time. Second thing, when these areas were established, FATA, they were directly administered by Islamabad, and there were tribal councils kind of an arrangement that had been made over there, which was directly being administered by Islamabad. Obviously, there was a lot of democratic deficit. Institutions, administration at local level was not very great, and this also in fact created the vacuum for the emergence of the TTP and the support of the local people, and specifically the tribes that live here, the Masood and the Wazi tribe in the north and south Waziristan. Also, Afghan Taliban found an ally in TTP. Okay, and because they had fought along with Afghan Taliban during the time when USA was present in Afghanistan before its withdrawal in 2020. So yes, it is because of these issues, the provincial issues of how they don't want the merger of these FATA areas with the larger Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, and how the Masood and the Wazir tribes in north and south Waziristan are having issues in this regard. That's why the problem. And we also know that there is now rise of Islamic State in Daesh, which is a threat obviously to Afghan Taliban in Afghanistan, and other things are there. So there is also possibility that many of the TTP splinter groups may join ISIS, which can be a greater threat to Afghanistan Taliban. So yes, many state, non-state dimensions, so political dimensions, strategic dimensions, terrorist, non-state actor dimensions are associated, historical dimensions are associated when we look at Khyber Pakhtunkhwa as a province in this regard. And what is FATA? So FATA is a semi-autonomous tribal area, federally administered tribal area. It was administered through 7 tribal agencies, which are districts. And there was earlier an act also which was called as the Frontier Crimes Regulation. So imagine they can be considered like, you know, a special status region that we have, maybe how we have special statuses for the union territories of India, how we have it for the scheduled areas and tribal areas, like that kind of a special status that was enjoyed by the FATA. And now that autonomy has been dissolved, it has been going down, which has been creating the issue. All right, because FATA has been merged with the larger Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. Now, why is Pakistan against Taliban now? What is the reason of Pakistan being against Taliban? When we talk about Pakistan always have enjoyed actually historically good relations with the Taliban. And after the global war on terror, there has been challenges to Afghan Taliban. The larger issue with respect to them has not been only guided by this terrorist challenge, but it also has to be viewed of how Taliban is evolving relations with India. And that is also one concern when we say that Pakistan against Taliban. So first, obviously, because they are facing a terrorist threat by the TTP's link, the Pakistan Taliban's link with the Afghan Taliban, which is certainly problematic, which has created uproar, which has created insecurity, so many militant attacks. But apart from it, also because of the idea that India should not, Taliban should not get close to India. It's a clear warning to India, to Taliban in this regard. Now, next question is, what is the 27th Amendment in Pakistan's constitution? We need to look at this 27th constitutional amendment in Pakistan largely in the light of, we can say that what has been, and it is like formalization of an open secret, that who runs the levers of power in Pakistan. And we know that there was always a deep state, which means the military is very powerful, and this 27th constitutional amendment consolidates this through providing more institutionalization in this regard. Okay, so yes, we can say it formalizes an open secret that the military establishment pulls the strings behind the facade of democracy. It certainly consolidates the power of the military. And how? So firstly, there is establishment of the Chief of Defense Forces, who will be a 5-star general rank. And obviously, because of this, there will be no criminal immunity against anybody who is of such a higher rank, and can be removed only through an impeachment process within Pakistan's constitution under Article 47. It also gives them legal immunity in this regard. And there is also, along with the existing Supreme Court of Pakistan, which will obviously accepting civil and criminal appeals, but now there is establishment of a federal constitutional court, which will be looking at the larger question of interpretation. So imagine taking away the constitutional powers of the Indian Supreme Court. So they have done that by establishing the Federal Constitutional Court. Is this understood? So yes, limiting judicial checks on the military and things like that, taking over constitutional jurisdiction. And military heads will now direct also Pakistan's foreign policy and diplomacy. So the 27th Constitutional Amendment Act will consolidate the power of Asim Munir. And yes, we already know that the coalition government in Pakistan operates with his blessings. Fine. So these are the larger dynamics with respect to Pakistan, Afghanistan. Now let's talk about India, Afghanistan, and I have specifically taken it with respect to the context of Taliban, because it is Taliban who is in power now, and questions can be in this regard only. So what is the new name of Afghanistan? So Taliban has been renamed as the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, and the earlier name was the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. We already know that there has not been any legal recognition that has been there by any international institution, because until now, even at the UN, there is a permanent diplomat of the earlier civilian government who represents Afghanistan at the United Nations. So there has not been legal recognition either by the UN or international organizations or by countries. What is effectively is, we can say, not a de jure recognition but a de facto recognition, because countries are establishing relations with the Afghan Taliban. All right. So this is the name of Afghanistan, which has not been obviously accepted by the international community, which is called as the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. Clear? Now, and done in 2021 after they came to power. The second question is Amir Khan Muttaqi on the UNSC list? Yes, so the foreign minister is certainly on the UNSC sanctions list since January 2001. and obviously he requires a waiver to travel internationally, and India had requested to the sanctions committee at the United Nations for a waiver to him to travel to India. Now, so this can be a question now. So why? Because they will want to ask you whether a person who is on the sanction list and India is having talks with them, so taking it in that direction. All right, now what was the outcome of the recent meet? So we know that one of the most important outcomes of the recent meet is that obviously India is establishing formal relations, diplomatic relations in this case, with Taliban government. And so in this regard, important step has been that the technical mission which was there to provide aid conducts India's humanitarian aid program in Afghanistan. Now it has been formally upgraded to be an embassy, and now there will be ambassadors which will be appointed from India to represent India at Afghanistan. So this is one of the most important update. Apart from that, India has spoken of giving many types of aid with respect to health infrastructure projects, water projects, humanitarian aid, ambulances, and other things. But what has Afghanistan done in this regard in this meet? What has been the outcome from their end is that they have condemned terrorism in the region, so hinting somewhere to the Pahalgam attack. And yes, committed that they will not allow Afghanistan soils to be used against India or any groups which are inimical to India. So this has been the outcome of the recent meet. You have to talk on both sides of that, what has India done and what has been promised by the Taliban to India. Now, why cooperation has been enhanced with Taliban? So we need to say that Taliban has come to power and it is here to stay for the foreseeable future. And India has always been a country which has supported peace process in Afghanistan, and we have always been wanting an Afghan-led, own, controlled peace process and government. Now that Taliban comes from the people of Afghanistan, they are part of the people of Afghanistan. India is establishing links with them, firstly on bilateral level, because this has the new realities. First talk of it on bilateral level, then we expand the dimensions. Then you can say strategically India is reason because Afghanistan remains strategically important. Now there are sanctions against Iran, so we need land routes because Pakistan doesn't allow transit routes, transit trade, and that's why we need new land routes. Even the IMEC is under some trouble, so there will be many challenges with respect to Chabahar. So Afghanistan becomes vital with respect to connectivity for trade, and specifically we know for Central Asia. As well as other countries have recognized Taliban governments, so we cannot be at the outlier in this regard. And one more dimension you can add is the deterioration between Afghanistan and Pakistan, but that should be a point of last priority because any relation first is driven by bilateral aspects and then by any third element or external factor. So an external factor cannot be the driver in priority of the bilateral relation. Okay, you need to keep that in mind. Now, the next question which would be directly thrown is India preparing to recognize Taliban? Is this the foreseeable future? So you can say that obviously there is a speculation because India is meeting the foreign minister and we are upgrading the technical mission to an embassy. But it is very unlikely soon, but yet depends on the changing security, strategic political scenario in Afghanistan and how there will be evolution of relations between India and Afghanistan, maybe. So we cannot completely outrightly say that this cannot happen. Neither we should say it will happen. So we say there will be some time before this happens. Okay, now the next question is, can a Taliban-led Afghanistan go from being India's enemy's enemy and become a friend? So yes, if we have a very friendly government in Afghanistan, it is very important for India's interest, projects, investments that we have made, nearly 3 billion investments that we have made for so many years. But we can say that this is more of a tactical relationship and friendship based on shared values looks very difficult at this point of time, because we still want Taliban to form an inclusive government which will have respect for minorities and respect women's right, which is not there. So looking at it from a tactical dimension, yes, but looking at it from a friendship based on common values, worldview, shared values looks difficult in the present time. And we know that India was Afghanistan's strategic partner, and we always worked with respect to the humanitarian aspect in Afghanistan. But we also know that Pakistan, Afghanistan have been close historically. So we have to weigh our options slowly and steadily and see how things evolve, how they upcome in the future. Okay, depends on that, whether Taliban can really become the true friend that we seek to envisage, which was earlier there with respect to the civilian government, the kind of friendship. Yes. So these are the aspects with respect to Pakistan and Afghanistan and Taliban.